Get the sun. Breathe the sky. Breathe the sky. Good evening, everyone. I'm your host, Dan Stafford, with the Midwestern Geek in Cali, and tonight we have a ginormous show, and this is my first actual show episode being posted on LBRY.TV. I'm going to be posting shows on this platform. I'll probably alternate between this platform and YouTube for a while just to see how things roll. But LBRY.TV, for those of you who've watched my shows in the past, it's a different platform. It's very much more open source. It's geared towards the small videographer or smaller channel, more indie channel like what I am. And you know me, I'm a little channel. 28 subscribers on YouTube. Yay. Ooh. Thank you to those subscribers. I mean, I really appreciate it because I know I'm a little tiny channel, but I have lots of fun. And tonight I have a humongous show. It's probably the biggest show with the most content that I've ever done. There's lots of fun stuff coming up. I've got some stuff on Cybertrucks, not just the Cybertruck, but multiple Cybertrucks. I've got some stories on that. An electric vehicle world record, some science stories, space stories, tech stories, you know, all the stuff that I love to cover. Well, there's some cool stuff going on this week. And then this week, I also have a reading section. So some interesting stuff going on in reading. So we'll get into all that. Of course, there's a little bit about Geek Fuel, coffee. Oops, the other way. Cameras all seem backwards to me. Anyway, you know, I do this video raw. I don't edit the stuff. I don't really want to edit the stuff. Video editing is tedious. I teach 35 vets IT, and you know, between 35 and 40 depending on how it's rolling any particular month or quarter of the year. And then I'm also studying advanced IT classes, so the amount of time that I have for editing video is put it into editing lecture videos for work. I just can't do it on this channel. Hopefully I don't muck up too bad in these raw videos that I give you guys. So I want to go ahead and dive into the show, and I'll end up talking more about LBRY down the road a bit. So let's give it a little bit of the infinity screen here. Infinity screen. Those of you who've seen the show know I love to talk about that infinity screen. It's kind of fun. Anyway, we'll get on to it. So I always like to start off with my blog, and of course things are not looking too good with LBRY for their web interface right now. I'm not able to access LBRY over the web. However, in the dedicated Windows app, everything seems to be working fine. Now, I haven't tried to play one of these videos yet on LBRY, but that's okay. You know, I'll on the app, I just installed it on, this is my desktop at home that I record on, and in the intro videos that I did over there for you folks on LBRY, those were done on my school laptop. You know, they were just quick on the fly, out and about, because I just literally found out about LBRY yesterday. So thank you to Chris Titus Tech. Chris is the one that was talking about LBRY and got me to give it a try. So I'll throw that out there. Appreciate the tip. And for those of you that have been following me on YouTube and Facebook and on Twitter, etc., You know that last week I had a Cybertruck dream. Seriously, I did. And it was a big show last week. This one's even bigger. It's kind of amazing. But anyway, we'll go ahead and get into it. For those of you on LBRY, this is my website. You can reach me at MidwesternGeekInCali.com. Yeah, I know it's blogspot.com. The MidwesternGeekInCali.com forwards right into that, so you can use either address. Yes, I use a blogger blog. I've been geeking for a long time. I like to call myself an elder geek for a reason. I've been at it for a long time, and I've been using blogger blogs for years. I have many of them, like 35 or so. They're all subject oriented, and I play with things that I like to play with. For instance, I'll show you another one real quick. All right, so this is Super Aquarian. Yes, this is me. I was born under a stellium in Aquarius. I have 5 planets in the sun in Aquarius. And yeah, you can come over and poke around in here, and this is all my kind of geeky, like, what the heck, oddball stuff that I like to do. And then, let's see, maybe, no. Oh yeah, here we go. This is another one. I'm a poet. I do a lot of poetry. I have been for many years online. This is my oldest blog on Blogger called Spellbook, and it's the online home for my poetry. And I've got several chapbooks of poetry, so give it a check out. I'll probably link that over on Midwestern Geek in Cali. Matter of fact, let's go ahead and do that while I'm here right now. I'll just throw it over into the sidebar links real quick. That won't take long. And we'll throw in the link, add link. Yep. Oh, wait, edit. There we go. Done and done and done, and oop, there it is now. It's over there in my Geek Links section. For those of you from LBRY who don't know me, I do teach IT, and I had 21.5-year career in telecommunications. I was a radar technician in the Air Force. I went in the Air Force at 2 weeks after my 17th birthday. I was an emancipated minor, and I became a radar technician in the Air Force, got out, bumbled around 10 years, wound up going back to school for aircraft electronics and civilian aircraft, and 3 airlines went bankrupt the month that I graduated with a 3.9 GPA and honors. So I wound up in long-distance telecommunications, spent 21 years there, got out, moved to California to be near our grandkids, and started a small computer repair business. I was way too mom and pop and residential. That failed big time. So I turned around and went back to school for IT. And as soon as I passed my A+, the school hired me to teach. I got out of the A+ 5 weeks early, started going into IT and teaching IT at the same time, and then I earned my MCSA in Windows 10, and I have been working on Windows Server 2012 since. I'm working on getting the third and final that'll get me an MCSA in Server 2012. That's where I'm at now. Also volunteer for a Civil Air Patrol. It looks like LBRY.TV has gotten their web interface back up. Even better. That just came in since we started having our little chat here. So anyway, this is the website. Come on over and check it out. I will always, always, always have show notes for my episodes, for these full episodes, with links to every article that I reference in the show. So I'm getting a little bit dry here, so let me get a little sip of Geek Fuel here. And we will move on. I'm going to close out the spell book. I've got a boatload of tabs open, so it might be bogging the machine down a little bit. And let's close the website out for now. And let's go on to this. Elon Musk on the Cybertruck. It's better than people realize, and there's more to it. Now, I bring up these articles and kind of give you a little bit of a gist of what's in them, but I'm not going to scroll down and give you the entire article on the show. I do not want to be stepping all over people's copyright. The idea is that I give you enough about the article that you might be interested in going to read it. If we are, hit the website, go into the show notes and click on the link and actually go read the article. These folks need people visiting their websites, and I don't want to take that away from them. I want to help them achieve that. So, you know, they don't pay me, but I respect the fact that they put a lot of work into getting all this information out there and collated and put together and building websites and paying for them. I appreciate being able to read their tech news, and I strongly encourage folks who watch this to go read the articles that I link. They're usually pretty cool. I've talked a good little bit about the Cybertruck. It is supposedly going to be incredibly reasonably priced to manufacture, somewhere on the order of about the third of what the cost of a traditional vehicle is to manufacture, given the engineering that's been done to it. It's very stout. As you can see, a big steel ball did not go through the glass. It sure cracked the heck out of it. I wouldn't mind if Elon gave me one of those t-shirts. I might even go online and order one just for the heck of it. But there's a whole boatload of digger deeper into the Cybertruck here. I'm kind of in love with this thing. I wish I could afford one, but not yet. I'm not making enough money YouTubing, and I'm not making enough money teaching to go be buying one of these bad boys. But if I could, I would, because it'd be fun. All right, so we're going to go ahead and skip on over to that. But if you want a deeper dive into what Elon's talking about, how cool this truck is, and what else there is in it that you haven't heard about yet, this is a good start on that. And it's an Electric is a really good online news site for electric vehicles. Really great place to find news about EVs. So of course, I think they might be almost as in love with the Cybertruck as I am. I don't think they'll admit it, though. Everybody likes to knock it for its looks. I think it looks awesome. I love it. It reminds me a little bit of Back to the Future, but it is the future. I think it's really cool. And onward to the next. I got 3 different articles here. One from Teslarati. Tesla Cybertruck spied filming segment for Jay Leno's garage with Elon Musk. And Tesla Cybertruck driven by Elon Musk and Jay Leno spotted driving around LA. Where was I that day? Not in LA, doggone it. Anyway, would have loved to have been there and seen that, but and here we go, another one. There's Elon hiding behind the unbreakable breakable glass, and he's driving around with actually he's riding around because Jay's driving. It looks like the article is saying. So go ahead and check those out. And then we have Rivian dropping their prices. Thank you, Cybertruck, because Rivian's going to be dropping their prices to roughly match the high-end 500-mile range Cybertruck for their SUV and their truck. It's going to be around the $70K mark, according to what I saw. You can get further details in the article. And while you're looking at the Rivian here, it's a nice looking truck. Take a look at that little port on the side, because that port on the side, you can slide out an electric cooktop and you can actually flip burgers on this thing with an electric range out there, out and about, or tailgating at the game, or camping out in the field, or whatever you're doing. And you could cook for a week on that thing, they said, and it used only about 10% of the battery. So pretty doggone cool. I actually like the Rivian. I mean, I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't toss it out of my garage for driving over my crackers, so to speak. You know, were someone to give me one. So just saying. And I read a little bit about it, and I definitely will be watching for more. But I'm still kind of loving the Cybertruck. And then the Hummer is coming back as a 1,000 horsepower electric truck. Now, GM, if they're doing this, they're pulling out all the stops for electric. And I got family that works for GM, so I'm kind of cool with that. You know, I used to kind of look at Hummers with a little bit of you know, don't really like them because they're spewing fumes into the atmosphere, so to speak. I'm a big one for clean energy and trying to do what we can about climate change and carbon in the atmosphere. Not so great. Hummers to me seem like excessive when it came to that, but an electric Hummer, that's another animal. And I would strongly suggest those of you Hummer fans that like it, 1,000 horsepower electric truck. Can you imagine 1,000 horsepower electric? Electric motors have 100% torque as soon as you apply power. I mean 100% from 0 RPM all the way up to 10,000 RPM. I don't know if they rev that high in that big a motor, but electric motors are known for being high revving and having full torque throughout the RPM range. Complete 100% torque from 0 RPM to max RPM. That would be some stout piece of machinery right there, that 1,000 horsepower Hummer. So if I ever were going to get a Hummer, that would probably be the one. But I still want the Cybertruck. Now, the last article on EVs, this one's fun. The Hyundai Kona Electric sets an EV record you never knew or probably even cared about. Great article. Guess what they did? They set the record for the highest altitude. They set this record at a pass over in the Himalayas. They drove this thing at over 18,000 feet. Try that in a gasoline vehicle. Good luck. You'll be struggling because the oxygen is thin at that height, and a gasoline-powered vehicle needs, guess what? Oxygen to burn the gas. So gasoline-powered vehicles, diesels, etc., are going to be struggling to go through a mountain pass like that. Electric vehicle, I'm not shocked by this record at all. Electric vehicle just needs battery power. There you go. Pretty cool record and a fun article. Go take a peek. Now, we're going to get into space, the final frontier here. Voyager 2 science instruments are back on after tripping fault protection mode. Now, here's the thing. Voyager 2, I believe it's powered by a small nuclear reactor, and it had solar panels and a small nuclear reactor. It's been going since the 70s. Voyager 2 and Voyager 1 are both out in interstellar space now. These are the ones that had the gold records with all the music from Earth and kids' voices and people talking in different languages. Really cool, inspiring story. There was a movie on Amazon just in the last few weeks called Troop Zero. A lot of fun. And anyway, so Voyager had some kind of Voyager 2 had some kind of a little hiccup that threw it into fault protection mode, And basically it does this when it's drawing too much juice from the power system. And now power system has been going long enough now, over 40 years, that satellite's been in operation for over 40 years. Now think about that. How many how many pieces of equipment, science equipment, hardware, computing devices do you know that are going to last over 40 years and still run? You ever seen a PC do that? No. These things were built back when things were built to last. Uh, so they're stout and basic, but they're little nuclear power plants. They're not big ones. Have been running for 40 years, and the radiation's dying back. So they're not as hot as they used to be. And these things have been running so long that they're only producing about 60% of the power that they used to make when they were new. So they can't run all the instruments that they were able to run when they were brand new. They have to turn a few things off here and there. And it's cold out there in interstellar space. Even with heaters, these things are running around minus 20 degrees to minus 75 degrees Fahrenheit with heaters. So that tells you something. And some of these instruments were only tested to 40 below. So, excuse me. Time to bring out a little bit of geek fuel. So, interesting article on Voyager 2. There's a little more depth to it than what I just gave you, but that's the gist of it. I strongly suggest going to read this. It's over on Forbes. All right, so The Verge, another one of my favorite tech sites. SpaceX successfully launches its fourth batch of internet beaming Starlink satellites. So this is the fourth launch with 60 satellites. So what does that make? 240 satellites up in the air now, or up in orbit now. So broadband's coming. Satellite broadband's coming. And excuse me, got a little bit of tickle in the throat and trying to work past it here. But anyway, they're talking about eventually putting up 42,000 broadband satellites, complete coverage all over the globe, and they're only going to be about 150 to 300 miles up. Current satellite broadband satellites are 22,500 miles up, not 300. The existing ones were 22,500, the ones in geosynchronous orbit. So there is a major amount of lag there. You're talking almost a 50,000 mile round trip to go up to that bird and back. That's a long hike. That's longer than any fiber run I've ever worked with, and I worked in long distance telecom. I'm telling you, the delay on that kind of round trip time, it's almost a full second. That's a lot of latency. Now these birds, you're talking straight line at maybe anywhere from 300 to 600 miles round trip. That's nothing. They're going to be faster than fiber as far as latency goes. You're talking probably in latency in the order of 5 to 12 milliseconds tops with that, because fiber has to go like kind of a circuitous route. It can't go in a straight line because it has to go around obstacles and rivers and lakes and stuff like that, and along railroad lines and such. So it doesn't get to go in a straight line. Fiber can't be generally laid in a straight line on land. And even under the ocean, you have the topography of the bottom of the seafloor, of the bottom of the ocean, right? So it's not a straight line. You're talking line of sight communications with all these Starlink satellites. And of course, OneWeb's coming on, and Amazon's doing their own constellation. Yeah, I mean, they're going to be, this is awesome. It's awesome. As long as they can deal with the issues that it's causing for astronomy, which I'm a firm believer and supporter of astronomy, but the world really needs this. and they need it done right. And I think SpaceX is really trying hard. So give them a lot of credit there, and this is good news in my book. So good article to go check out. Alright, these are the most detailed pictures of the far side of the moon. Yep, China's got a rover on the far side of the moon, and I believe a lunar orbiter as well. And they've gotten some really amazing pictures. I'm just going to show you the one at the top of the article. You need to go actually check out the article for the rest. But these are the best pictures that the world has ever seen of the far side of the moon. Pretty cool article, and definitely one worth going to check out. All right. So we're getting into the little bit more sciencey stuff now here. So this one is researchers in the US and China use machine learning to make better solar panels. So I'm interested in this one for a couple of reasons. A, the better solar panels, because better and more efficient solar panels means cheaper solar panels, and they've already gotten a lot cheaper in the last 10 years. So you know, this is good for the environment, it's good for homeowners and businesses, and it's good for reliability in the power grid, and especially if you tie solar panels with battery storage and an automatic grid cutoff, so that if you lose grid power, you can disconnect your internal home power source, your battery plant and solar cells, from the grid, so that you don't fry anybody working on repairing the grid lines, and just run off your own system and your backup. Right? If you have no battery backup and no automatic disconnect, and you have a power outage, guess what? Solar cells or not, you've got no power in the blackout. So it needs to be done right. And anything that improves solar cells makes them less expensive and more efficient. So this is a pretty cool article. Clean Technical, they're a great site for clean energy news. As you can see, they're talking about electric cars, Tesla, electricity, solar energy, wind energy, geothermal, all kinds of stuff. So great site, cool article, definitely worth going to give it a check out. Little sip here. Motorola Razr is coming. What you can expect from the first foldable flip phone. All right. Well, the original Razr definitely was fun and hot at the time, but that's old news now. One of the things that it talks about is how you can expect a little bit of lumps and bumps in the screen because of the folding. So just a little bit more of the picture there, but you're going to want to come over and take a quick peek at this article if you're interested in the folding phone here. And it looks kind of cool, actually. So there you go. And we're in technology now. Windows 7 should live on as an open source, spectacularly optimistic petition demands. Yeah, I'd say so. For Microsoft to actually give up source code for any version of Windows and make it public and open source, that's kind of not bloody likely, if you ask me. I'd be very shocked if they acquiesced to this petition. I really would be surprised. Now, don't rule it out. Microsoft has been playing with open source, and they're more talking about doing desktop as a service rather than having an installable operating system like everybody's used to. So I suppose it's possible it could happen. It's worth reading it for just the idea and the possibilities, but my answer to, if you want to keep your older hardware and you don't want to deal with the issues that come along with Windows 10, and Windows 7 is end of life, then there's another alternative, and it's free. It's called um, Ditch Windows 7 for Ubuntu with this Linux with this great guide. Yeah, Linux. Linux is a free and open source operating system. It costs absolutely nothing. It's well developed. It's gotten way easier to use in the last 5 years, 6 years. It's got great hardware compatibility, lots and lots of free applications, and it can be run fairly well with a graphical user interface. You don't really need to know a lot of terminal to be able to use this the Linux distributions for desktop that are out there today, especially something like Ubuntu. There are several of them that are good for users. My episode 103, which is over on the YouTube side, because I just found out about LBRY yesterday. So, and by the way, Jason Evangelo, Jason Evangelo, I hope I'm saying that right. I think I've got it there. He does a great podcast called Linux for Everyone. I've listened to multiple episodes. He's around on Discord. He's a regular contributor to Forbes, and he does a lot with Linux. He's the one that turned me on to Peppermint Linux, which is based on Ubuntu, but is lighter, trimmer, and much faster. It runs better on older hardware with less specs. So Peppermint's a really good one. It's got the stability of Ubuntu without quite as much bloat, and it's faster, and it really runs well. And it's based on Ubuntu 18.04 LTS. That's Peppermint 10. By the way, it's still really easy to use. It has a really good graphical user interface, not hard to get used to at all. And Ubuntu itself, they're coming out with 20.04 LTS a little bit later this year. Won't be long. It'll be sometime this spring, late spring, early summer. So lots of good news coming out with Linux. All right, WireGuard VPN protocol will ship with Linux kernel 5.6. This is probably a couple of years out before kernel 5.6 is going to be out for Linux. Kernel is like the core of the operating system. So it is the main gig. Windows has a kernel, Mac has a kernel, Linux has a kernel. And right now, the latest kernel that's actually shipped out for use with like a 18.04 LTS Ubuntu, which is the long-term stable release that's currently available, I believe, is 5.4. 5.5 is coming out very soon. 5.6 is still a work in progress, but it's going to ship with WireGuard VPN, so that's pretty cool. Built right into the OS. That VPN is basically a way to encrypt your connection through unencrypted Wi-Fi and internet so that people can't read your traffic en route. So really cool development there. And Linus Torvalds releases Linux kernel 5.5 with better hardware support. That kernel just got released, and it's probably going to be a little bit before it makes it into any actual updates from Canonical, which is the company over in Great Britain, I believe, that has developed Ubuntu Linux. So it might be a little bit before you can get 5.5, but it's not going to be too awful long. It might even come with 20.04 LTS. So excuse me. All right, I'm going to scoot over to the next article. Atari is opening its own hotels in 8 U.S. cities. Now, yeah, that is, oops. Let's see if that's working the way I thought it did. Yeah, these guys, Atari. Remember them? antique Pong and early video games. Yeah, that's who we're talking about, all right. They're opening gaming hotels in 8 U.S. cities. That sounds like a blast, man. A blast from the past, but it definitely sounds like fun. And I like to throw fun articles and stuff into these shows. So here's one definitely worth coming over and taking a read, especially if you're into gaming and more fun yet, retro gaming. All right. What's new for the e-paper and e-reader industry for February? This is an article, latest roundup from Good E-Reader. Lots of interesting and fun stuff there. I will not dive into detail too much. Go and check it out. Excuse me. Having a rough time. This is a fun one. The open book e-reader is what open source lovers read right now. This is cool. You get the hardware and you do your own case. It runs on, I believe, a form of Linux, and it's an alternative to the Kindle or the Nook, and it will work with multiple different e-reading formats. It looks pretty cool and fun. Here's someone who built a wooden case for their e-reader. It just has a cool, fun, retro kind of feel. Uses e-ink and looks like quite a blast. Sorry guys, I'm having a rough time with this thing. In the U.S., library visits outpaced trips to the movies in 2019. Yeah, 2 to 1. Seriously, 2 to 1. People go to the library, double the rate they go to movies. That's a cool statistic. Great article. Very hopeful and upbeat. Goodness. And well worth a read. And how to levitate objects with sound. So, yeah. Let's close this down. And anyway, this is something I've talked about before, acoustic levitation. There's been some suspicion that the ancients knew how to use acoustic levitation to build some of the monolithic structures that they built in the past. And this really only is talking about levitating very small objects, glass beads and such, nothing very large. But I mean, everything starts small, and anyway, definitely worth a look. And this one's fun. Lab turns trash into valuable graphene in a flash. They're saying that they can flash used plastics, spoiled foods, waste paper, all the kind of garbage that's piling up all over the country. They can turn this stuff into graphene, which is highly valuable and great for electronics and stuff. This is the same stuff that's in pencil lead, and they're saying that they can do it really cheaply. So this is a really cool article. It's over on phys.org, and they've got lots of great stories. Definitely go check this one out. It's really cool and awesome news. Oh boy. Anyway, now we'll skip the notifications. Papyrus greeting card brand to live on after stores close. So this is interesting. Apparently, some of the online stores, I can't remember exactly who it was. It's been like a few days since I read this article, but there was a store chain, or several store chains that actually had rights to the Papyrus brand name, so they're going to be able to continue carrying Papyrus online after the brick and mortar stores close, either online or in other stores. So you won't see the standalone Papyrus stores necessarily, but that doesn't mean you won't be able to get Papyrus cards from stores that carry them otherwise. So that's really hopeful. It's still sad news for the malls and stuff where Papyrus was paying rent, the people who work for Papyrus, but they were pretty high-end cards and they're still available, so that's actually good news, and I like that. So now we're going to get into a little bit of sci-fi. Oh, wait. Before we get into the sci-fi, I almost skipped over my own reading stuff here. So this is a segment I'm doing called Dan's Favorite Books. And I'm going to talk about some books that I have read over the years that I consider some of the great classics, and a couple of more modern ones that are just plain out and out fun that I absolutely love. So let's scoot over and take a look. This is just my drawing of the TARDIS. I'm a big Doctor Who fan. I was doodling one day and I came up with my own TARDIS. But Stranger in a Strange Land from Robert Heinlein. This book, I read this book in high school. It's been around a long time. Robert Heinlein is one of the authors that I consider one of the three grand masters of science fiction in the 20th century. There's Heinlein, there's Clarke, and there's Asimov. Arthur C. Clarke, Isaac Asimov, Robert Heinlein. Those are like the top three sci-fi authors of all time in my book. And I would call them the grand masters of 20th century science fiction. Stranger in a Strange Land is Robert Heinlein's most well-known book. It is an extremely cool read. It's mind-bending, and it's still relevant today. I would go check it out. All right, so we're going to skip back the other way. And C.J. Cherryh, Merchander's Luck. This is one that I read probably in, I want to say roughly the early 90s. This was a really good book and a really good series of books. So I definitely recommend checking this book out if you can find it around. If not, you can probably find it on e-readers. These all are favorites of mine, and I literally have read thousands and thousands of science fiction books, and these are the ones that come to my mind first. So Isaac Asimov, Robot Visions. This is a collection of Isaac Asimov's. He's one of those top three grandmasters that I told you about in the 20th century. He's the one that originally wrote I, Robot and Centennial Man, the one Robin Williams starred in. I, Robot was the one with, I believe it was Will Smith a while back. The books were better than the movies by far. They're extremely visionary. These books, I mean, the things that Asimov thought up before robots even were close to existing, they were just totally science fiction at that time. And computers were very, very primitive compared to what they are now. I mean, they filled up huge rooms the size of my house for a computer that wasn't much more powerful than a pocket calculator back then. But this guy thought up concepts that were far above and beyond anything that we're barely even getting there with AI now. Barely. I mean, so these are robot visions, call it robot visionary. This guy was amazing in the things that he thought about and that we're probably going to have to deal with in the next 100 to 200 years of robotic development. So these stories will open your mind about robots and what's coming down the pipe, and they have some other interesting aspects to them too. I definitely would recommend checking out this right here. All right, Childhood's End. There's the third Grand Master, Arthur C. Clarke. This is a story about the future of human evolution, a possible future human evolution. It's also, it's kind of a story about growing up and leaving things behind. The title kind of gives that away. This is a story, again, that I read probably in my late teens or early 20s. I would almost say it might even have been high school or early 20s, but definitely a long time ago. It's been out. 2010 Odyssey 2. Okay, that's another book that he wrote, but this is a much older book that Arthur C. Clarke wrote, and it's just a fantastic story. It'll kind of bend your mind. These books are definitely mind-opening, and they're definitely just, they'll blow you away. Now, Sundiver, this one is kind of by David Brin. It's kind of more like a whodunit kind of story. It's a little bit more kind of detective mystery-ish, but aliens in a sci-fi setting. And they were actually, David Brin was actually talking about using lasers for cooling back in the early 70s, long before you heard about that being done in labs. And that's one of the really cool things about this book, and it definitely stuck in my mind. And it's about a ship that explores the outer atmosphere of the sun, and there's an onboard mystery, so it's definitely a little bit of a thriller and suspense. If you're into mysteries and kind of detective-ish stories and sci-fi all at one, this one's got all of that going for it, so it's a good book. The Magic Engineer by L.E. Modesitt Jr., one of my favorite fantasy novels of all time, and it involves old school engineering, kind of Renaissance level engineering and blacksmithing mixed in with magic. It's just a lot of fun. Really love this book. The Strange Case of Origami Yoda. Now this is kind of a kid's book. It's much more recent. This is from, I want to say, like around 2008, 2010-ish. It's kind of Star Wars derivative, but it's kind of like a campy kid's story in a way. But it is just a blast. I mean, if you like stories like Stranger Things, if you like stories like like the movie Stand By Me, add in a little Star Wars sci-fi. If you like stories like this is really old school, Encyclopedia Brown or the Hardy Boys or Nancy Drew, there's a little bit of that kind of element to it. There's that like kids and friends and all that kind of stuff to it. It's just a whole lot of fun, and there's a whole series of these books, and I want to say 4 or 5 of them in I believe there were, and I read them all, and they were all great. Tom Engelberger. So absolutely a fun book. I mean, the cover is hilarious, but the story is great. It's just awesome. So definitely go in, take and check this one out. Piers Anthony, The Source of Magic. This is a novel in the land of Xanth. Now, Xanth is a land where puns come to life. Like, for instance, a shoe fly might be a flying shoe that comes and flies along and whacks you upside the head. It's really creative, fun, and if you love fantasy and wordplay, if you're into playing with words, crosswords, poetry, any of those kind of things. These novels, there are several novels in the land, set in the land of Xanth. At least 15 of them there must be, and absolutely loved all these books. This is a classic, and it will just it's entertaining as all get out. Some of it's comical, some of it is just mind-bending. It's just amazingly clever, and these have been around for a long time. I was reading these in the 80s and 90s, and they're absolutely fun. I really picked up reading these in the early 90s, but I know they've been around since the 80s, so definitely any of the Xanth books, you'll have a wonderful time with those. And Edgar Rice Burroughs, A Princess of Mars. Oops. Let me see if I can do it this way. We'll zoom it a little bit. These books, I can't stress this enough. Probably half of the ideas and stories in Star Wars were snatched from these books. I don't know if any of you remember that movie back around 2010, 2011 or so, John Carter of Mars, that didn't do so well in the theaters, probably because the stories were a little too old school and people thought it was a ripoff of Star Wars. No, it's the other way around. Star Wars is a ripoff of John Carter of Mars. These books were written by Edgar Rice Burroughs between 1914 and 1941, long before Star Wars came into existence. This is the same guy who wrote the Tarzan books. All right, he was from the Chicago suburb of Oak Brook, and he wrote Tarzan, Conan the Barbarian, and John Carter of Mars. There's a series of them called Mars Barsoom. That's what the natives called it, and it has everything to do with swords. On Mars, a king or a prince was called a Jed, J-E-D, and then a king over or a king over chiefs. I'm sorry, I said princes, but they're chiefs. Their chiefs on Mars are called Jeds, and then a king over many chiefs is called a Jedak. Okay, there's this predator roaming the wilds of Mars that has the head of a lion, the body of a scorpion, and wings like a bee, called a Sith, for instance. And they fly around Mars on these floating boats that look an awful lot, in my mind, like speeders in Star Wars, like land speeders on Tatooine. Mars is a dying desert planet, like Tatooine. Now, I can't tell you how many, and the aliens are green. They go around to these various cities on Mars, and in one city they get put in a pit and have to fight this giant monster. Now, John Carter is a Civil War veteran, and he's a master fencer, and he's an Earthman, and he winds up on Mars by astral projection. And when he's on Mars, he has a physical body, but he has earthly muscles, and he's a master fencer, so he becomes the best swordsman on Mars. So he becomes one of the highest Jedaks of all the Jeds on Mars. So you see where I'm getting this? That Star Wars is a modernized version of John Carter of Mars. And these books have been around so long that you can get them on e-reader for, like, I want to say 99 cents or $1.99 on Nook, probably somewhere comparable on Kindle. You might be able to get old paperbacks from the 70s pretty cheap, but these books have been around for a long time. I want to say there's about 7 or 8 of them. And if you love swashbuckling, early science fiction, space opera kind of stuff, this is the granddaddy of them all right here, John Carter of Mars. These books are fantastic, and when you consider when they were written, between 1914 and 1941, they will bend your mind. The guy was writing about robotically piloted spaceships, actually, you know, like self-driving cars, think self-driving spaceships, in 1930 something. I mean, if that doesn't have a little bit of genius to it, some of the concepts, he was talking about brain transplants in some of these stories. It's amazing the concepts that this guy had going on way back then. I mean, we're talking, this guy had some genius level concepts, because who was talking about any of that stuff in the 30s? You know, Tesla maybe? Now, anyway, I'm a little on my soapbox here, but I think this story, this series of stories deserves a much bigger place in the history of science fiction than it's been given, and a lot more recognition. People should really go check out these books. They're a boatload of fun, and if you love swashbuckling space operas, I'm telling you, this is a dirt cheap, long series full of it. So, full of swashbuckling, that is. So definitely give those Edgar Rice Burroughs books a check out, and go grab those John Carter of Mars books. You'll have hours of entertainment on the cheap, and some really cool old stories that are just a ton of fun. And Larry Niven's Ringworld. All right, so Ringworld is like the most ginormous space station ever. And this is a classic novel from back in the 70s. There's several other, there's Ringworld Engineers and The Smoke Ring. I want to say there's like about probably 4 books in this series. Definitely really good old classic sci-fi, hard science fiction. It doesn't have much of a fantasy content to it. It is literally hard science fiction, and if you love sci-fi, this is a must-read. And here on the fantasy side, from the Forgotten Realms books, I used to have 50 or so of these Forgotten Realms books. There's dragons, there's dwarves, there's you know, big like Viking like warriors, and then there's drow elves who live in the dark underground and can see in the dark, and then there's Drizzt Do'Urden, who is probably the most amazing sword fighter in the entire Forgotten Realm, and his adventures, he's just like the coolest character ever as far as fantasy novels go. So Forgotten Realms, those books were by Tor Books, and Tor Books, sorry, was headquartered around southern Wisconsin, I believe Darien or Elkhorn, which is pretty close to my hometown. So it's kind of a homegrown book publishing house. They had the Forgotten Realms and Dragonlance series of books, and we're talking several hundred books, and they were all very well written, long, full-length novels. So if you find any of these Forgotten Realms books floating around, they're definitely well worth a read if you're into the fantasy genre. They're top-notch stuff. So just saying, and that's the last of them for my favorite books. And we'll go ahead and get out of the reading section and then skip over to a little bit of sci-fi. Doctor Who makes history by casting its first black doctor, and that happened in last week's episode, and it kind of opened up a whole new layer in Doctor Who canon. So you definitely want to check it out. I don't know what the heck this video is. It's probably the end of whatever was playing. if you missed the episode, there's a lot of details in here. You might want to go watch the episode first and then come back and check this article out. It'll be over in the show notes. But they dive into some conjecture and theorizing about the black lady doctor that was on the last episode. Fans are really happy that they did that on the show for multiple reasons. I agree. I think it's a good thing. And I think it's an interesting mystery. So definitely an article well worth a read, but watch the episode first. It was episode 5, season 12, I believe. And then we're going to get to the last story of the evening. The biology of coffee, one of the world's most popular drinks. Now, I love coffee. I'm not joking at all. I sip on coffee all day long. Matter of fact, I'm going to sip a little bit right now. I have an old school cast iron English coffee mill, and I grind my own coffee grounds. I have an old school percolator. I make nice strong coffee. I have been a coffee lover for a number of years now, since the late 80s or early 90s. And working third shift got me going on coffee, and I've never looked back. There's a lot of interesting biological effects, health benefits, all kinds of stuff. This is from Salon. Definitely a very good article. If you love coffee, you're going to love this article. And it's got a lot of cool stuff in it. And I don't want to do spoilers, but go check it out. And on that note, I'm going to wind it up, and let's go back to the front page of the blog real quick. And I'm going to skip back over to the camera for a minute. And let's see, so I can see what I'm doing. Hey, y'all. Anyway, I'm a Wisconsin boy, lived some years in Texas. Now I'm out in California. Spent some time in Denver, about a year or so when I was in the Air Force. So I've been a little bit around the U.S. Never really been out on the East Coast. Not been in the Pacific Northwest, but have been in California, New Mexico, Colorado, Nebraska, Wisconsin, Texas, Pennsylvania a little bit, actually, when I was a young kid. Had relatives in Detroit and stuff, so kind of around the center to southwest part of the country is where I've spent most of my life. Seen lots of the U.S., have not been really much outside the U.S. But meanwhile, I'm going to say this has been a long episode. I hope I haven't been hacking too much. I'm trying to get over this cough, but it's been a rough one because all the students at school are sick, and I keep getting it back. It's just like, enough. Anyway, I want to thank everyone for sticking with it this long. This one's going up on lbry.tv. Next week's episode will probably go on YouTube. The week after that on LBRY. I'm going to be doing that for a while just to see how things go. If LBRY plays out as well as I hope it will, I'm going to eventually hope to migrate over to LBRY long term, I'm thinking. Anyway, on that note, of future editions here. Happy Vulcan fingers to you from the Agent of 42. May there never be a rogue wave in your coffee mug. And thank you for watching. You can find the show at www.midwesterngeekandcali.com, at MidwestGeekCali on Twitter, not in, at MidwestGeekCali on Twitter. Of course, on the right hand, on the right sidebar of the blog, you can find all our social media presence. I've got a discussion group on Facebook, Midwestern Geek and Cali, Facebook page up. And of course, I welcome you to check out all of our social media. I hope if you're watching this on LBRY that you'll be kind and tip a little bit. Doesn't have to be anything big, or click on support. Really appreciate it, and hope you folks on LBRY have enjoyed the first episode of Midwestern Geek in Cali that's been up over there. This is kind of my current show format. I do get into covering conventions, and we're trying to get set up with press passes to a couple of big ones this spring. Looking around mid to late May for a couple of them, so I'll let you know more about that as it gets closer and if I get confirmation. On that note, feel free to drop us a line. You can hit me up, message me on Twitter, leave comments on the video over on LBRY. Go over to the blog, comment on the post there. There's an email link to email me on the blog, etc. I'm pretty responsive to my viewers because I don't have a huge number of them yet. I'm not quite overwhelmed enough that I won't respond, and I definitely appreciate whatever feedback you may have. Keeping in mind that my time is thin. It takes a lot for me to do just what I'm doing now, and I'm not making a living at this. I'm doing it because it helps me feel like I'm living, and I'm doing it in hopes that I have common interests with my viewers, and you all find what I'm bringing to the conversation interesting. And again, thank you for watching, and I'm going to call it good night. All right, take care.